Morning everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, Social Media Part 1, Getting Started, Your First Social Media Strategy, Measuring Success. I'm delighted to be joined today by Charlie Sanchez, Digital Marketing Consultant at Dunkink, who will be helping to host this session today. Dunkink are Brakes' chosen social media agency, so we're delighted to be joined by him and to be able to kind of hear from his expertise. Today we'll take you through some essential principles around setting up an effective social media strategy, how to know how well it's working, and the methods that you can use to tap into its success to help ensure you're driving real value for your business through your social media. Just to let you know, this session was pre-recorded due to social distancing, but Charlie will be staying on at the end to answer any questions you might have in the live Q&A. We've also got some fantastically helpful resources to share with you that are downloadable from the QR code at the end of the session. But don't worry if you don't have your device at the ready to be able to scan those. We'll be making video and those resources available via YouTube and our event site on brakes.co.uk after this session. Plus, we'll be just giving you a bit more information about some other webinars in our event programme that you might want to either watch that have happened already or are happening over the next couple of weeks. And one of those is a follow-up session to today on the 15th of July, which is a brilliant session covering 5 free tools that you can use to take your social media to the next level. You can register your place for that webinar on the Brakes website. Again, just follow the links from the homepage to the event page. And if you've got any questions today, please do submit them. Use the Q&A function on your Zoom bar at the bottom of your screen, and then we'll answer them all at the end. But without further ado, we hope you really enjoy the session today. If you want to play the video, that would be amazing.
Hello, welcome to this social media webinar focused on social strategy. I'm Charlie Sanchez. I'm a digital marketing consultant for Dunkink, and I'm going to talk you through today the basics of a social media strategy. So, what are we going to cover? Firstly, we're going to look at why social. What are the pros and cons of social? Why does it stand out as a channel, and why is it worth doing? Secondly, we're going to start to talk through the basic elements of a strategy. We're going to look at how we measure the results of that strategy to see if it's working. I'm going to share with you some bonus material that I have created for you so that you can start to put what we've covered today into practice. And then lastly, we're going to open it up for any questions that I can answer. Before we start, I want to make clear that today's session isn't about the blueprint of a perfect tweet or how to make sure that everything you do goes viral on social media. Personally, I don't think those are worthwhile endeavours. I think they are the end result of a good strategy rather than a strategy in and of themselves. What we're going to talk about today is how we can think strategically about social media in the context of your business and your goals, as well as your audience, and how we can be relevant and valuable to them. So, the first thing we're going to cover is why social media. What is the opportunity? And so social media is unlike any other tool that we have in marketing. It is at the same time both the biggest channel and the smallest channel, which means we can hit absolutely everybody. We could target everybody aged 13 plus in the UK, or we could target a very, very niche group of people down to a couple of dozen, or even the individual. And what that means in terms of marketing is it gives us a huge amount of leverage. At the click of a button, somebody sitting at a laptop somewhere can launch a campaign, a global campaign that reaches either millions of people or even a few dozen. There aren't many or even any other marketing channels that give us that sort of power. On top of that, the power that it gives us, or the access that it gives us to these people, is direct. We no longer need to rely on television channels to vet our adverts, or radio stations, or whatever it might be. It allows us to talk directly to our audience, and that gives us the ability to say whatever we want, within reason, whenever we want. And that in itself is a very tempting and alluring prospect for brands, the fact that you can be in front of your audience all the time, telling them exactly what you want to say. But this presents a challenge. You might have heard of the term attention economy, where essentially different brands, apps, whatever it might be, are competing for our eyeballs. They are competing for our attention. And whether this is push notifications on your phone or alerts on your desktop, we are living in a world where everybody wants us to look at them. They want our attention. And this generally takes the form of interruption. Pop-ups on websites, push notifications on your phone. We are constantly being interrupted by brands that want us to pay attention to them. And as an advertiser or as a marketer, this gives us an essential conflict, which is the more people we want to reach in terms of our audience, the larger our audience size, the less relevant we are going to be. Yes, we can run a campaign, or we can kind of come up with a creative idea that's going to be relevant to everyone in the UK, but is that going to be as relevant as something that you have built for a single customer of yours that you know intimately? Absolutely not. And so the temptation is to bombard and broadcast the messages we want to share with our audience. We, as marketers, we have to ask ourselves, how much is enough? Is 10 people, reaching 10 people with our campaign or our message enough? Or is it 1,000? Is it 100,000? Is it 50 million? That's a question we need to ask ourselves, because we are now operating in a highly leveraged environment where the content we create and the messages we share can go out to that many people. But where do we draw the line? How do we define our audience? And how do we communicate with these groups? How do we make sure we're broadcasting signal and not noise? I like to liken this with an analogy of fishing. You have your industrial commercial methods of fishing, the drag net, where you drop these deep nets in the water and you just run them through and you pick up everything that is in the water. You might pick up dolphins and turtles and the catch you're hoping to get, and comparing that to something like spearfishing, where you go out exclusively with the intention of targeting a certain type of audience, and you're single-mindedly focused on them. Yes, drag nets will, I guess, give you a greater yield. The numbers will be bigger, but proportionally, in terms of your yield to target ratio, you're going to bring up a lot of things that you don't want. And more fittingly, the dragnet is actually harmful to the environment in which you're doing it. So this idea that we can just broadcast high noise content in the hope of catching the kind of fish that we want to catch actually is detrimental to our efforts. And I think that is something that a lot of people do because they don't know better. It's the typical mindset of more is more, but in my opinion, and strategically thinking, where resources, time and budget are limited, it can be the case that less is more, and we'll come on to that. So how do we adapt our mindset for social media in 2021? Traditionally, the marketer or the company is at the center of our communication strategy. We are in the middle and we are surrounded by potential customers, and we serve as a magnet, drawing them into us with our alluring offers, incentives, value propositions, whatever you want to call it. But that doesn't work on social, because as I've mentioned on the left there, when the playing field is as open as it is on social media, we are, generally speaking, one of an infinite number of choices in an endless parade of alternatives. So we need to switch our mindset and actually put our customer at the center of our universe, and we need to build around them. We are one of many options for them that include our competitors, alternative products or solutions, or simply doing nothing. I wonder how many of you in your marketing efforts need to actually establish the problem for your audience. Are you selling a solution or a product for which the need isn't necessarily established in the mind of your audience? So we've got a lot of work to do as marketers to put our audience and our potential customers, our prospects, in the center of our strategy. So with that said, let's move on to the foundations of a social strategy. In my opinion, there are 4 things we really need to focus on. Firstly, why are we doing social media? What do we hope to get out of it? Who are we talking to? What do they want to hear? And where can we find them? Where can these conversations take place? So starting with the why. One of the most common issues I have when talking to clients is that they feel that they don't know what they're doing. They say, I don't get it. I'm just doing it because I feel like I should be. And from an outside perspective, it's very clear that if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, how will you know when you achieve it? And I think part of the problem is that they don't view social media as part of the broader mix. They view it almost as a replacement sales funnel, because social media is so versatile and it can do everything ranging from raising awareness to driving traffic to generating sales and building a community. They kind of expect it to do all of those things, and what I like to challenge them with is discussing the broader marketing mix, establishing which channels are best suited for what, and then inserting social media as part of that process. If you're process driven, when you're talking about social media, it becomes very clear what the desirable outcomes may be. So depending on what your business might be, social media might be a best fit for awareness for you. So maybe social media can help you find prospects local to your business within a small catchment area. Maybe it could be best served as a traffic driver back to your website. But what I would encourage you all to think about is, if social media could only do one of these 3, 4, 5 things in front of you, which of those would it be? And the reason I want to challenge you and get you to focus on just one of them is that if you have a very clear objective, a singular clear objective, it becomes easier to plan around it and easier to measure its effectiveness. After working out why you're even doing social media in the first place, by extension of that, you should therefore know who your audience is going to be, and therefore the audience is the determining factor in what you're going to have to say, why you're saying it, and where you're going to say it. When we're talking about our audiences, I try and encourage people to think of what is known as the minimum viable audience. So, how few people can you get to and influence to make social media worthwhile? The temptation, as we discussed at the start, is to go really big with your social media messaging, is to reach as many people as you can. And what that does is it dilutes your message, it reduces your relevance. And the plain truth is that none of us here have enough time and money to build a brand for everyone. We simply can't, and therefore we shouldn't try. What we need to do is we need to find our tribe. We need to find the people who are truly relevant to our business and who our business is really relevant for. Now, in this instance, it could be F&B managers battling unreliable supply chains. Maybe they're care home operators juggling dietary requirements, or maybe they're chefs confined by consolidated menus. Whatever it is, we need to get a clear picture of who it is we're trying to talk to, and that will then help us understand what we have to talk to them about. Now, again, as I mentioned at the start, we need to change our mindset. We don't want to just strictly go to market talking about all the things we want to say. We don't want to lead with why our products are the best, or the new features, or the new sales, or whatever it is that we have to say. What we need to do is we need to spend some time thinking about what our audience wants to hear. There's a famous quote, I'm sure many of you will be aware: nobody cares what you can do, everybody cares what you can do for them. And that's what we need to keep in mind with our social media marketing. We have things we want to say, we have things our audience want to hear, and somewhere in between those two is the sweet spot where we are relevant and we have authority, which is a really important part of social media. You might have seen lots of various backlashes for brands that got involved in political issues that essentially people didn't want them to weigh in on. And so we want to avoid that, and we want to stick to where we are welcome and where we have authority and experience, and most importantly, relevance. That is how we will get people to pay attention to what we have to say. And that's quite a key term, pay attention, because when someone gives you their attention, it has value. They are paying you with it. And so if they are paying you with their attention, with their time, it stands to reason that you should give them something of value back. And that generally comes in the form of content, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So what should you be putting out on social? Well, the answer is not more of the same. It's okay not to know right now. We will discuss some tools and techniques in the next session that can help generate ideas so that you know with more certainty what people want to hear. And then you can go to market, you can go onto social with a confidence that the topics that you're going to talk about, there is demand and people interest in what you're going to talk about. Finally, the second most common question I hear when it comes to social media is, should I be on Twitter? Should I be on Instagram? Do I really need TikTok? The truth is that it really doesn't matter. You need to be wherever your audience is. I suggest you pick a single platform, the best one, best for your audience fit, and master it. It's much more important that you do it well, you do social media well, than you just do a lot of social media. And you see the quote on the left, which obviously I've adapted from Bruce Lee, who the original quote was, "I fear not the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times." And the idea being is that if you keep bouncing around and doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that with no clear goal in mind of perfecting the art form that you have, you'll never progress, you'll never get better. So if you pick one thing, one type of content, one platform, one audience, it gives you the ability to really focus on what you're doing, really gives you the opportunity to measure the improvement, and really gives you the opportunity to stand out from the crowd, to be that signal instead of that noise. So, now that we know why we're investing our time and resources into social media, who we hope to reach, and what we're going to say when we do, and where we're going to reach them, the next step is logically to check whether or not it's working and whether or not it's a good use of our time and resources. Which brings us on to measurement and metrics. So metrics are the gift and the curse of digital, not just social media, where everything is quantifiable. The temptation is to measure everything, and we can very quickly end up with data overload. It becomes impossible to work out which information is useful, or even which is the information that's going to tell us whether or not what we're doing is working. So what I've done is I've picked out one or two metrics that will help you understand whether or not what you're doing is working for each of the key objectives that we established earlier. For awareness, we've got impressions and reach. That is a broad guide of how many times has our content been seen and how many people have we reached. Under traffic, we've got clicks, so how many times was something clicked on, and the click-through rate, which is what proportion of people that saw it clicked on it. Then we come to sales, so how can we establish leads or conversions via social media activity. Then it comes to satisfaction, so how are people engaging with us online, and what is our response time when it comes to dealing with complaints or queries. And lastly, loyalty. Primarily we're going to look at followers and referrals. So how can we make sure that our customers are coming back and they're bringing more people with us? I'm not going to cover all of these right now, because what I've done is I've actually created a cheat sheet that will accompany this webinar, which will essentially give you a thorough definition of each one of these metrics, as well as some benchmarks, global benchmarks where applicable, that will help you give you an understanding of maybe how you are measuring up against other people. What I will caveat this with and say is that where possible, rather than using a global benchmark or even an industry benchmark that someone like me might be able to provide, the real thing that would add value for you is to have a look at your competitors. Who are you up against and how do they measure up on some of these things? You might not necessarily be able to see their performance in terms of how much traffic they're driving back to their website, but certainly in terms of loyalty and satisfaction and reach, you might be able to establish, how big their communities are. How many likes are they getting for each one of their posts? What kind of calls to action are they using in their posts? Because when we're measuring our performance, we obviously want to make sure that the message and the objective go hand in hand. And I'll come on to that in the second webinar, where we will talk a little bit more about some of the tools that we can use to make these more effective. Finally, on measuring success, I want to cover followers and what are known as vanity metrics. And the reason I want to call this out specifically is that more than anything else, something I get from clients is that they want to increase their follower count. It is a metric which I guess looks good to the board, or maybe makes them feel more credible or have more authority as a business. And I can totally understand that reasoning, but the important thing to me is to measure what counts. So come back to our objectives. How does social media fit in to our overall marketing mix or our sales funnel? If it's not the loyalty play, if it's not building a vibrant community of people that love our restaurant or our product or our service, then it kind of doesn't really matter. We have to measure what counts. And the graphic that I've developed for this is a simple demonstration of increasing your audience size doesn't necessarily increase the number of people that are engaging with you. And it's easier to think about this in terms of email. For example, say you have an email database of 10,000 people, but every time you send out your monthly newsletter, the same 100 people open it. Now, what's the value of those 9,900 people that never open your email? It's zero, right? They're not reading or consuming your content. They're not in contact and engaging with your business. Your true audience size, or database size in this case, is 100. And I would argue that having those 100 engaged people that religiously open your email is much more important than the 9,900 that don't. And the same logic stands or kind of is in effect when it comes to social media presence, except for the fact that other people can see how many followers you have. It's much more important, I think, to have 100 engaged followers that are genuinely interested in using your product or service than it is to having 10,000 people that don't. Social media platforms prey on this insecurity. You can run advertising campaigns that will essentially give you followers. They will advertise people to give you the thumbs up on Facebook or to follow you on Twitter. And you can spend money doing that. But if the investment that somebody has made to follow you is simply clicking a thumbs up on social media, they're not really invested in your business. Whereas if someone that is engaged has followed you because they received excellent customer service, or they love your product and they want to be first in line if you ever do, a summer sale or a Black Friday deal, and they're following you on Twitter for that, then you could argue that has a lot more value. They're a lot more invested in your brand, and therefore they're worth spending time on. Having 10,000 people who have just thrown you a thumbs up on Facebook because it was put in front of them, they're not really worth your time, and they won't give you theirs. So that's just something I wanted to raise on vanity metrics, and in particular followers. I view followers as an outcome, not an objective. If you're doing a great job and you're delivering fantastic product or service or experience, people will naturally follow you because they will want more. Followers by themselves aren't the objective. They're the outcome of a job well done. So now that we've outlined our basic social media strategy and how we're going to measure it, I wanted to provide some examples of what this might look like in practice, setting up clear social media strategies to address business goals or challenges. Example number 1. The issue is we've got a great product, but nobody knows about us. So in this instance, I've used the example of a care home. So we've got a new care home that we think is fantastic, but nobody knows about us. So our objective is we want to raise awareness of our new care home. Who is our target? In this case, we'll simply say it's family caregivers, so members of the family that are looking after an elderly relative. What is our message? What do they want to hear from us? They don't want to hear that we've got 20 different rooms for residents, or the various kind of facilities that we might have. What they want to hear, or what we can assume they want to hear, going back to our Venn diagrams, are the reassurances that they might have, the answers to objections that they might have. So perhaps they worry that they're not qualified to take care of their relative. Perhaps they're worried that they don't have enough time to give them the kind of the support that they need. And so we want to address that by having our message really focus on, medical expertise, like quality of care, as well as quality of life, all the different activities and things that might address their concerns about their own care for their relative. We may establish that Facebook is the best place for this. We could set up a Facebook page that is local to the area of our new care home. And how we would measure that performance is by reach. We would look at how many people within that area we are hitting. Example number 2. We are struggling to generate leads. So we have decided to put on an event to try and bring people to our event and generate leads. So our objective is to get industry professionals to attend our event. So therefore our target audience is going to be the relevant industry professionals. We need to talk to F&B managers, we want to talk to chefs, we want to talk to hospitality staff and professionals. What are the things that they are really struggling with right now? They are they're interested in training, they're interested in support, interested in incentives, value for money, insight into what's happening with the overall industry at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty, socially, economically, politically, and so if we can shed some light on that, then that would definitely be of interest to them. We think that these F&B managers and hospitality staff are primarily going to be on LinkedIn, so we're going to focus on LinkedIn, and we're going to measure that performance by clicks back to our landing page, and how much traffic we can drive back to our site. Obviously, the overall objective of this campaign is to have registrations, but again, what we're going to do is we're going to use social media as our traffic driver, not as our registration driver. That's what the landing page is for. If we have lots of people coming to our website and they're not registering, that's a landing page problem. That's not a social media problem. If, however, we see people coming to our website and leaving straight away, then maybe we are sending the wrong kind of people. Maybe we need to re-examine our message or our audience. But in this instance, social media is playing the role of the traffic driver. Example number 3, we want to engage our customers and keep them coming back. So in this instance, we are a hospitality venue, let's say a pub, and we're very busy, but we want to increase our frequency. People aren't travelling as far to come to our venue, and therefore we need the local population to come back more often. So what we want to do is we want to talk to our existing customers, so people that are already coming here, and we want to get them to keep coming back. So what might make them come back? So all of your typical marketing strategies can come into play here. We're not reinventing the wheel. Things like loyalty points, a referral scheme, promotions, seasonal menus, all of those things that might encourage people who have recently come to visit to keep coming back and bring friends. What's the best place for this? Maybe Instagram. It's very food, it's very visually focused, and it might give us the ability as well to target, if we're going to run some ads, to target locally around our pub. Within a 5-mile radius, we can find and target people. How are we going to measure this? Well, we can measure it through followers or through shares of promotions and discounts. Perhaps we could say, once a week we're going to randomly pick one of our followers and they're going to get a free dinner, something like that. That encourages people to come and follow us, gives them an incentive to engage with us and to keep coming back and checking in on us. And so that might be a third example of how we're using social media very, very clearly in a fixed sort of binary fashion, almost, of it's either working or it's not. And finally, the last thing I wanted to leave you with today is some bonus material. I've created 3 free resources for you guys. They'll be made available after the webinar for you to access. The first one is an audience profile template, and that is to help you really get under the skin of your audiences, help you define what it is that they're after, what are their key desires, what are their challenges, what are the common objections they have, and help you map those out so that you can plan your messaging accordingly. Secondly, there is an editorial calendar template to help you plan your social media messaging around key events and around your own content. And then lastly, there is the performance measurement cheat sheet that we covered earlier, which looks at what are the key measurements that you can use for your social media, and what are some benchmarks that maybe you'd like to keep in mind. So those will be made available to you. My email address is in each one of them. If there's anything that's unclear or anything that you'd like some further guidance on, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. But otherwise, that is going to be everything from me. So thank you very much for your attention. I believe we're going to go to some questions.
Thanks, Charlie, for that absolutely fantastic session. There was some brilliant insights in there, and those examples at the end, kind of really practical look at how you can apply those kind of tools that you were talking about. So thank you so much for that. We have got some brilliant resources, as Charlie mentioned, to share with you, which are available from the QR code, which we'll be putting up on screen in a moment. They are that audience profile tool, that editorial calendar that Charlie mentioned, and that performance measurement cheat sheet as well. Do feel free to scan the QR code now, or there's a short link there, but we'll be making this available, as I say, at the end of the session. So do look out for it on YouTube or the event page on our website as well. So don't worry if you miss it now. And as Charlie mentioned, his contact details are included there for you as well. Next slide, please. We just wanted to give you a little bit of news as well about a couple of the webinars coming up, and also the ones that you can go and watch if you missed them. So we've got a fantastic session on the 13th of July from Love British Food, who are going to be covering why include British food on your menu, and some great thoughts and tips for how to do that. And then we've got a follow-up session to this one on the 15th of July, social media part 2, where Charlie will cover 5 free tools that you can use to kind of really help take your social media strategy to the next level. Plus, as I mentioned, if you missed our previous webinars, they are available on demand from YouTube and our event page. There's some fantastic sessions in there. So Natasha's Law parts 1 and 2, if you're planning for that at the moment in your business, that's a definite must-see couple of sessions there for you. We've also got one on trends from the CGA, who are presenting their latest trends report, and a brilliant session on lots of tips for minimising your food waste. So you can watch all of those, as I say, from YouTube or the event page on the website. So do go and have a look. But without further ado, we've got a few questions come through. Let's just have a look. So, Charlie, I guess the first one we've had is one from someone just asking, how can I look for people to target with my social media to build a bigger following? I guess that was kind of covered quite extensively in the session anyway, and in that audience profile tool that you've provided as well. But I don't know if there's anything more to add on that one.
Not particularly. I feel that as long as they're the right people, it should be fairly straightforward. If they are, if as is often the case, simply more customers, I would have a look at your existing customers and understanding commonalities between those, whether that demographic or geographic or whatever it might be, behavioral. You can then set about looking for more people that fit that mold, and then create content for them. And as long as you're sharing it somewhere that it's going to be seen, so you're not sharing something on LinkedIn if your audience are on Instagram, for example, then I think providing it's interesting enough, people will find you.
Yeah. Had one come through. We're a high street coffee shop, and we sell homemade cakes and sandwiches and great coffee, but we're one of a few coffee shops in our town, and sometimes we feel we struggle to stand out. Are there any tips or do's and don'ts for a great social post? I guess that's quite a general question, but
well, I mean, it's an interesting question, and I think it's probably a question that that a lot of people may have, especially on a local level, where you maybe don't have the resources or a marketing team to really work on, what your differentiation is. And what comes to mind is I did some work last year, I think it was, with a local barber, a hairdresser, and they essentially wanted exactly the same thing. They wanted more foot traffic to their to the store, and we were having a talk about essentially what are the methods that they use to send their existing customers, so the people that are already coming there, sending them online to social, and then to close that loop, what are then the things that they use for social media to bring people in store? So it's not strictly a single directional arrow. It's actually a little bit of both. And how can they capitalize on what they do have, which is a store? Which is a store with existing customers, and how they can actually get that and feed that back into an existing social media strategy. And with them, they they were quite a conscientious business. And so when they were looking for a way to differentiate themselves, something that actually came quite easily to them was some sort of charitable work. So they started running, I won't call it a promotion, but they started running a like a process or a program, that's the word I was looking for, where they were giving free haircuts to homeless people to help them get back on their feet and things like that. And things like that, certainly in a local area around a local business, can really help differentiate. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be something charitable, but certainly community based. So another thing that they did was they started taking more pictures of their existing customers, sharing those online, encouraging people to vote which they thought the cut of the week, and all the things like that. So there's lots of different ways that you can use your community or think about your community and find your position in that community and that and your voice, and that will help you find out kind of what people want from you. In a coffee shop example, saying you've got great coffee, it might be true, but every coffee shop is going to say they've got great coffee. So you know, what else have you got is kind of would be my thought.
Thanks, Charlie. Another one that's come through: how often is it best to post? I'm guessing this is probably quite a common conundrum for a lot of people. You know, are there any good times of the day, and is there too little or too much in terms of how often you post?
Yeah, that's a sort of how long is a piece of string. And there are in-depth guidance on exactly that for each of the platforms. So, for example, LinkedIn publish some data on the best days to post, which generally I believe is Tuesday through Thursday. So maybe avoid Monday and Friday. I'm sure you can imagine why one is really busy and the other is sort of clocked off. But all the different platforms have guidance on things like best time to post. In terms of how much or too little, I would take a cop-out answer and say, don't decide, let your audience decide for you. So start posting, you know, what you perceive to be a minimum like required amount based on, you know, your resources, and then just for a week or two, up it, maybe double it, and go from, I don't know, 2 posts a week to 4, and see if that actually changes anything. Is there appetite for more of your content? If not, if things are basically the same, then you know that there's no benefit to the additional labor that you're taking on. So I would say don't decide yourself, or even let me tell you. I would let your audience tell you, because they're the ones that really matter.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Charlie. Last question, I think. Are there any brands that you think do social media really well, that we could learn from?
Yes, I mean, yeah, there's loads, dozens. I think by and large, there are a couple of I don't know, brackets maybe that I would put things in. So there's you'll all know Greg's, the business. They've got a fantastic social media tone. So that, again, if you're not familiar with them, they have a very sort of cheeky, irreverent tone that fits really, really well for their audience and, you know, their customer base, that don't take themselves too seriously, and just like a little bit of fun, a little bit of banter, whatever it might be. That suits them really, really well. So that's a good, I guess, marketing fit strategy for them. Obviously, not everyone can do that. And so some of the other brands that I think do well with their resources are a business like GoPro or Spotify. They do a really nice job of taking what we would call kind of data and understanding how people are using their product. So Spotify in particular, they release all sorts of information charts, things like user data for their social media, and that helps bring their brand to life through other people, because they can tell you how many times this song was listened to, or what the song of the year was, and all of this sort of stuff. Quirky people that are listening to Christmas songs in June, and using that to kind of tell a more human story. On top of that, you've got your typical kind of Apple that use their sort of shot with Apple photos. Those are really nice. But I guess on a smaller scale, there's a glasses spectacle company called Bloom, and they do a really nice job of incorporating a little bit of CSR into their social strategy, as well as user-generated content. So people submitting themselves wearing their new glasses and things like that. So that works really nicely. Toy brands actually do a really good job on social media on that creative side of things. Lego in particular, lots of obviously pictures of the product, people building stuff with them, but they also run a lot of polls and competitions. They ask for user submissions on what products they should make next, and really, they understand that, okay, apart from kids, there's actually like a core audience of Lego super fans that buy all the Lego Technic. And when I was a kid, Lego was just basic Lego. Now it's all electric and Wi-Fi and Internet of Things and everything. So that core group of Lego super fans that has grown up with them, they've stayed loyal to them, and they keep listening and learning and trying to understand how they should develop their product based on what their audience is telling them. And I think that's a really great way of using social media as a market research tool. And if you were a restaurant, you could easily see how that might translate to, polling your audience or your community about, menu development ideas or, themed nights or whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, I think those are really good examples, Charlie. I guess the other one for me that came to mind was Innocent Smoothies. Do a really good job of kind of bridging that gap between their corporate responsibility and kind of putting out posts around their sort of values, but also tapping into innocent fun, I guess, and posting some really engaging stuff, and do some brilliant stuff around events as well. The Halloween pumpkin comes to mind, where it was a nightmare that your Apple battery was kind of running low. That sort of thing that sort of was a bit of a cheeky fun thing, but really engaging. And
I would put them in with Greggs, in as much as they're a brand that has absolutely nailed their tone. They know exactly who they are and what people want to hear from them, and they don't deviate from that. And I think that's a winning strategy. And in fact, actually, just one more brand I wanted to mention that I really respect is the beauty and cosmetics brand Lush. Because they actually took the decision 3 years ago maybe, to leave social media. They had built up multiple successful channels on YouTube and Instagram and Twitter and you name it, and then they actually decided that it was kind of not so much, it didn't reflect their values. We're all aware of some of the trappings of social media and kind of the social pressure that can put on people. They actually decided that they were going to create their own community that, from a business perspective, I guess they could control much better than handing over or building a community on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it might be. So there are options out there for brands that think maybe they're not a good fit for social media, because not everyone is. I mean, most people are, I would say, but it doesn't have to be for everyone. And whether that's building your own community on a forum, that's fine, but obviously you need a lot of resource for that. Another way would simply be just having an email list, and instead of your direct communication with your audience being social, it could be email. That raises challenges in terms of how you reach new people, but there are brands out there that have made what I think to be strong decisions in actually leaving social media. So it's not kind of necessarily a magic bullet that's going to fix every business problem or be suitable in every occasion, but I definitely think for a lot of businesses, especially if you're operating locally, social media is the really fantastic way of reaching your prospects and your existing audiences.
Yeah, no, thanks, Charlie. And I think that's a really interesting point, isn't it? It's I think it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning. Have a think about what it is you're trying to achieve, what your business is about, how you want to go about things, and kind of sticking to that, I guess, as your mantra. But like you say, just considering your options out there in terms of what's best to achieve what you want to try and achieve with your business. I think it's probably the key thing, isn't it, really, as a starting point?
Yeah, absolutely. Social is a fantastic channel, and it's got loads of advantages over other channels. But at the same time, depending on what exactly you're trying to do, other channels also work best. If you were just pure e-commerce play looking to sell stuff online, chances are search might be, or paid search, or search campaigns may be a better route for you. It really comes down to what your business is trying to do.
Yeah. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks so much. That's all the questions that have come through. So I'll just remind everyone, you can watch this session afterwards on YouTube, and the Brakes website will be loading it up in the next couple of days, so do look out for that. But without further ado, thank you, Charlie, for your time today, and a brilliant session, and we look forward to that follow-up one on the 15th of July.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.